How is it going, everyone? We are live again, and we have a special guest today. Frank, how's it going, man?
Going well, going well. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's nice to have you on here, and I know there's a lot of exciting stuff going on at GenysysGo, specifically for those who've been following. He's going on yesterday, so that always gets everyone rowdy. But before we get far into that, it'd be great to get a little introduction on yourself and a boilerplate of what GenesysGo is really taking care of and the services they're providing on Solana.
Yeah, so it's yeah. Yesterday was super crazy. We're still trying to collect our thoughts and collect ourselves, but yeah. So I'm Frank. I'm one of the co-founders of GenesysGo. I kind of quick, I guess, in background on myself. I spent number of years in the legacy finance world, running groups for financial planners and yeah, just like your normal, typical, traditional, business, legacy business stuff. But my partner Steven and I, we've always, both of us are super tech people, hardcore hardware nerds, and so that's always been a huge hobby of ours. And I think blockchain, crypto, gave us the opportunity, like it did, I think, for many people to completely change the entire direction of their career paths. And so so we got into blockchain and started building servers for Solana, because we thought Solana was just so super cool as far as the hardware requirements, and the way the proof of history tech works. And so yes, we started building validators back in late 2020, and then actually moved into RPC servers and networking in March of this year, February of this year, something like that. And then yeah, we've just been grinding ever since. So RPC servers, kind of a super quick soundbite on them. I mean, they basically are they're the backbone of the blockchain network. They're the bridge that bridges Web 2 legacy internet tech to the chain. They kind of act as on ramps and off ramps for information, to make sure that the flow of data going to the validators that build the blocks are staying it's staying nice and smooth, and there's no congestion.
Awesome. Yeah. And then so the validators, that's just like the fundamental verification or consensus mechanism of how the transactions are approved onto the ledger. I think that's pretty important. I know I was jumping on and doing some research just on GenesysGo, and I'm like, oh, cool, RPCs and validators. Like I get the basic fundamentals, but you start to lose me, right? Like the average DeFi user wants to click connect wallet, approve a transaction, and let it go. So I think it's definitely important to kind of understand what's going on there. And I think more importantly, like, how important are RPC nodes really for projects? And when did you guys notice that there was a demand for these things?
Yeah, so all great questions. So when you connect your wallet, there you're sending a request to the chain, right? The chain is that request is basically saying, find my wallet, update my balances, get my balances. If you have multiple tokens in there, get the balances of each one. And it creates a connection that updates that information. All those requests before they go to the validator network, or any request before they end up hitting the validator network, they hit the RPC layer first. The RPCs, they will go and they'll actually be the part of the network that will go search previous transactions, right, or previous blocks. They'll go find where your where the most recent balance is, that type of thing. And then when you go and you click on you want to place a trade, swap tokens, mint an NFT, it will it actually is the RPC servers are the ones where basically they kind of load balance the validator layer. So if you've got the user up here, RPCs right here, and then the validators making the foundation of it all, the RPC layer is effectively scanning the validator layer the entire time, finding the least congested validators, and shooting requests to them. So that way you don't have like one validator that's just gotten like massively slammed with just a ton of requests, and then like it goes down, and then you have another one that gets slammed with requests, and then it goes down. So they're as essential as validators. They actually from a hardware standpoint, they actually get hit harder than validators do. But without RPC servers, it's kind of it's a very symbiotic relationship, because without RPC servers, validators and the chain wouldn't be able to operate. And of course, without validators in the chain, RPC servers wouldn't have a purpose in blockchain.
Okay, yeah, and gotcha. And we definitely saw sort of this heavy load in RPCs. There was just the plethora of NFT mints. Like there were tons of issues there. How does GenysysGo look to solve these issues? And just like from a very, very basic point of view, you guys provide validator and RPC services, correct?
Yeah. So we actually it's funny because our NFT drop marked our 60th NFT drop with no errors served, which was kind of fun. But yeah, I mean, basically, kind of early on in like the NFT, when the Solana NFT boom really started, we kind of looked at like the existing candy machine setup and the way that NFTs interact with the RPCs, which is much different than the way like your traditional like DeFi project would interact with the RPC networks. The requests, like the data requests are heavier. Persistent connections, they have the potential to like not have the right kind of handling code. So you can have machines that are just like taken down because the RAM in the machine is just getting eaten up, right? And so so basically kind of early on, what we built kind of optimized on the back end, the hardware side, the channels and the routes in which like requests would flow specifically for NFTs, and then built kind of like an auto scaling structure where we realized kind of quickly that these NFT drops, it's a massive resource use right in the beginning, and then like it's literally a shark fin, it just as far as traffic goes. And so so we built, like I say, just kind of a high burst, high scalability package, if you will, for NFT drops specifically. So that way, like somebody that is doing an NFT drop, a user's not going to have to, like get set up with nodes for like a full month or something like that. If it is like a one-time use case kind of thing, and yeah, it's been working. So it's obviously been working pretty well, but yeah, a lot of the work that we've done has been with some of the just phenomenal developers at like Metaplex and Solana, where Solana's whole ethos, right, is that it's able to do what it's able to do because the hardware side and the software side are optimized to work together. A lot of other blockchains, it's really a software layer. And then the hardware just processes whatever the software tells it to, and the thing, like, they're not really built to like operate in true harmony, and that's kind of what makes like Anatoly and the core engineers of Solana, like, that's what makes their design like so brilliant, because they're like a lot of them like former Qualcomm engineers. They building cell phone towers, and that's a situation where hardware is super important, and so. So they took a look at the blockchain world, and they said, wonder what would happen if we built this really amazing code, and came up with, they came up with a brilliant proof of history model, but then they put the hardware into that as well and said, not that the two layers just need to play nice, but they need to play really, really well together. And that's a lot of what we've been doing.
Yeah, and to my understanding, at least in my layman's terms, because you get a lot into the technicals, and I think that's great because, one, I think it just goes to show how necessary these RPCs like nodes are is one thing, and they're not something that, okay, sure, a developer can go set this up and do this on their own, but it will take some time away from developing. So you guys are sort of like, look, let us be the experts in this. Even if you only need it for a one-time NFT drop, it sounds like it's nice where you're not having people set up these entire nodes and it's like, well, look, we don't need it anymore. So I think that is incredible. And just to kind of wrap this back around, in my understanding of it, Solana wants to almost scale with hardware. So like they're working in harmony in the sense that like you're always looking to upgrade your hardware, but they're also looking to optimize the code. Is that sort of what you were getting at?
Yeah, 100%. It's really interesting because like it's easy to forget that Solana is, we're in a live beta right now, right? Like it's easy to forget that when you see like, TVLs skyrocketing and you just, like see all of this, all of these amazing projects coming out with fantastic code and innovation and, a lot of like, massive wealth creation. And it's really cool to think like all that's happening in the beta. So the Solana team, they're always rolling out updates. As a matter of fact, like we're in the process, the network's in the process of doing a software roll up from one software branch to another. And each roll up, it makes the hardware that much more like effective at handling what the software is doing. So there's some really cool. I think there's still a lot of runway left in terms of what the hardware and the software are capable of doing together.
Awesome. Yeah. And it really seems like you guys have gotten the RPCs down pat as of recently, like 60 NFT projects. It seems you guys have got a handle on that traffic. I'm curious, how has that been gathering all the hardware for that? I also see you guys do geo distributed servers. How has that been to set that all up? Has it been a pain, or since you guys are sort of being the experts in this, it makes it a little bit easier?
Yeah. So back in like March or something like that. The Serum, that was kind of like the first time that like RPC nodes like kind of had the spotlight shined on them. I don't know if you remember or not, but back in like March, that was kind of like the first like big high profile time when the Serum nodes got overwhelmed. And like when the Serum RPC nodes get overwhelmed, that can have a trickle effect. So then like at that time the Radium nodes got overwhelmed, and you were starting to see where like settling a trade was like taking 30 minutes because there's just so much of a backlog. And it was funny because at the time we had we were just running a validator, and it was it was actually like gaining in popularity, which was pretty awesome. But my Steven had sent an email out to the Solana Foundation, just like hey, we'd love to help because validators and RPCs they're basically the same machine.
Okay.
And they're running the same like code. So if you know how to like build, manage, operate a validator, the switch to like an RPC actually isn't that difficult. The networking connectivity layer, that's where like it gets tricky, and and the difficulty comes in. But the actual like building of the machine, that's pretty much like kind of a one for one port. And like to our shock, they actually responded. And so so we started talking to them, kind of started working with them a little bit, and they got us in touch with some of the hardware vendors that they were building relationships with and contracts with, and it gave us the ability to get hardware, and park it in like high performance data centers, all around the world. And then what we basically did after that was build a load balancing layer on top of that, so that way our network is it's smart and it's able to tell where's your request coming from, where's the closest server, so that we can minimize latency, minimize traffic errors, that type of thing. And with the foundation's help, it's been a lot less difficult than it could have been.
Yeah, no, that's amazing to see sort of like this almost, I mean, for lack of better terms, like a push and pull. You guys are looking to solve this RPC issue, even Validator issues as well sort of beef up the network, and the Solana Foundation is there to help. And it kind of just goes to show for the ecosystem. I'm curious, it seems like as of now, obviously more users and more hype launches, we may see sort of more RPC hiccups. I know you were on a stream the other day and you were mentioning that validators may seem to be something that you wish there were more of. Is that sort of the stance there? What's the balance on what the network looks like? I know recently there was that outage with Grape, and I kind of just threw a lot at you, so you can maybe
you're good.
unwrap that one by one, however you see fits best.
No, you're totally good. Yeah, so I think, so there's a few things to unpack there, right? It's interesting because what's all packed in there, it's all kind of related to the same thing, right? It's the network, it's the amount of compute power in the network, right? The Solana halt, the network halt, was really kind of a comedy of errors, is what I've been calling it, because no single event, no single thing that happened on that day by itself could have brought the network down. It was a confluence of things that brought a confluence of things that all happened at the same time. That's what did it, right? So the Grape IDO, the amount of traffic generated, even if it does so it overwhelmed the validator network. Cool, but that's what the RPC layer is for. The RPC layer is there to load balance the validator network. Basically, if the validator network starts to get overwhelmed and starts to take too long to process requests, they get kicked back to the RPCs, and the RPCs basically just cycle. So there's, Solana, the team already built in a mechanism to protect against massive amounts of high traffic. So like I said, Grape didn't kill the network, but the huge amount of traffic didn't help the other two things. So it's kind of think about it like you're in your house, and in this scenario right now, it's just pouring down rain. Okay, so now you add in another layer. So validators, they're meant to communicate with the rest of the network via a couple of different access points or ports. Those ports, they're very specific to receive specific traffic. The Solana code at the time didn't require the closure of all other ports. It's obviously strongly recommended. That's kind of basic network security 101. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to do it. So there were a lot of validators that had a lot of ports open that shouldn't have been open, and those ports aren't set up to do anything. So now imagine for a second, right? Going back to my house analogy. You're in your house. It's pouring rain, but now imagine somebody opens a window, right? You're gonna get splashed into your house. Well, in this case, somebody started pointing requests at those open ports specifically. So now instead of you just have the window open and it's raining outside and you're getting splashed in your house, now instead somebody's literally directing all the rain through the window into your house. Well, the validators don't know what to do with those requests, or they didn't. They don't know what to do with those requests. So that just starts building up and eating up more and more system resources until the system drops. Well, so there's that, but that by itself also shouldn't be enough to bring down the network, right? Because that would require over 66% of all validators to effectively be misconfigured, which they aren't. Well, then, so there's also a piece of the network architecture called the feeder queue. What the feeder queue does is it basically creates a proper assembly line, to put it super simply, for requests to go through, and there was a bug in that feeder queue. So now think about it as instead of your house having gutters and having proper drainage, now it doesn't have proper drainage, so all the water is now just sitting underneath your foundation and just building up more and more and more until the foundation cracks because the ground's too wet to hold the weight of your house. So and again, but a bug in the feeder queue was something that Solana team actually was aware of and had been aware of for some time. But again, by itself, it didn't pose a threat to the network. So they actually had a software patch that was going to be rolled out in like less than a week that was going to fix it. So so the network halt as a whole, it was a confluence of those three things all happening simultaneously. Super rare, like one-off perfect storm type of event. I think go ahead.
Oh yeah, and just to add on there, like this sort of goes back to right that this network is building in beta. Like these things aren't going to be perfect. It's at the end of the day, this all comes down to humans input, and it's just a matter of identifying these things and getting a solution. I remember seeing on Twitter like that day, all the validators looked like they were having. Obviously, there was an outage going on, but they were having a ball working together and figuring it out and kind of all hands on deck getting it back going.
Yep.
And yeah, it's just interesting that as a whole, this is obviously something that it may come back. Obviously, not the same issue, but network outages. But this is sort of what GenesysGo as an infrastructure provider is looking to almost reduce and limit these aspects. I'm curious because you guys have your RPC services, and those obviously seem like a hit. Tons of people need those. Something I was a little bit more curious about is, do you guys have a lot of people having you guys run their validators on your servers, or is that something that's a little bit more challenging? If so, like what is the reason a project or somebody would want a validator to be ran for them?
Yeah, so that's a great question. We actually power 4 or 5 validators on the network at the moment, and like with that, basically, all we are is a hardware provider in that case, right? Projects. A project that has like a huge following, social media influencer that has a huge following, somebody like a group a group or an individual that has a large community. When we first got our validator going, that was actually how we hit like break even on our validator in terms of actually like it becoming profitable. Was we started engaging with communities, right? And that's kind of always been something that's like really paid off for us. Yesterday being a great example, but and we kind of like as we very early on we realized like, oh, there's always there's always a ton of people where they may have this fantastic community. They may have a way where they want to like incentivize or work with that community to help secure the network, but maybe they don't have the technical knowledge to configure the machine, configure a machine, maintain it. Maybe they don't want to go find the parts or anything like that. It's a do you have the will, or do you have the skill, and do you have the time to try to implement any of those other two? And for a lot of people, the answer is no, and that makes total sense, right? Because if you're managing like a large community, it's a question of where's your time best spent. Is your time best spent working on troubleshooting a machine? No, your time is best spent like interacting with your community, driving engagement. And so we wanted to be able to offer a service where not people that are not as technical or don't have the time can still brand and market a validator on their own. They reap all the rewards from it, and then not have to worry about the headaches on the back end.
Got it. Yeah. And then there's like 2 layers to being a validator, right? Obviously, if you have the community there, you can turn it into something profitable. But on the other side, you're helping keep the network up and running. It's like a incredibly important piece of infrastructure. So I think that's the double-sided part. And yeah, for something like a project, now that you're saying that, it makes a lot of sense. Like, okay, getting people to delegate their Solana, it'll be something that's not too hard. Even if it's just a little bit of profit, they're doing their share to keep the network up and running. So
exactly.
I think that's super cool there. And then just like on that aspect of, look, you guys don't have to deal with all this hardware. We already went out. We have solid contracts for this. We have good distributors. Like we can set this all up. You guys can brand it in a win-win scenario. So that's starting to make sense there, definitely. Just to jump back to the RPCs, something I was curious with is Other ways people, or maybe in the beginning, it even sounded like people were trying to use AWS servers for RPCs and they were having tons of issues. I'm curious on one, how are you guys able to offer the same services and better at cheaper prices? Like, that's obviously a great question. Um, and I think we'll just leave that one there for now. Yeah.
Fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, the cloud server instances, while they may work fine on other chains, Solana, the hardware requirements, they're 10, 20 times greater than the next closest chain, right? The amount of throughput needs are leaps and bounds ahead of any of the other chains. They Cloud instances just get destroyed by Solana's by the work that Solana does on these machines, and so they're not only are they not even remotely as efficient as just like a bare metal server, like the ones that we use, where it can be built specifically for Solana, configured specifically for Solana, but they're also like way more expensive because Solana, you push a lot of data. Like, you can literally push petabytes per day of data, through RPCs. And Web 2 big tech, cloud providers, first of all, they're not set up for that. Secondly, they very much profit off of pushing tons and tons of data because they charge a ton for bandwidth. And so you end up with something that you end up with bandwidth costs that are 3-4 times what you might pay for the machine itself, because of just the sheer volume of data. And then also and then on top of that, you're not processing the data remotely as well. And so so that's part of the reason why we're able to do much more and charge less for it, is simply because we're built for that. We're specifically built for that. Like Steven and I, we started GenGo like on Solana, built specifically for Solana, config like for Solana, right? Everything we cut our teeth on the Solana network, which is by far the hardest network to build and configure for, and the hardest network to balance a network layer on top of that blockchain for. It's very easy. It's very easy to, like, if you're super good at Solana, it's very easy to jump to like other chains. It requires a whole complete business redesign to, let's say, be a node provider for Ethereum and then jump to Solana, because basically all of your existing tech for Ethereum is going to be subpar. It's not going to be able to perform as well. It's not going to be able to handle throughput. And on top of that, like, blockchain decentralization, like that's kind of like, the whole ethos. Cloud providers, they're 100% centralized, right? So you're taking one of the most centralized entities like in the world, right? Like, the big 3, big 4 tech firms, and making them a complete and total necessity for a decentralized network to be able to operate.
Yeah, and I think, just to jump in here, this gets us into a cool segue, inching towards the way where I know a lot of the viewers are. But I think this is important. Like, this RPC and Validator, and like how the Solana network is actually scalable. Like, these are a lot of things, like getting into the technicals, like I don't understand by any means. And it's important to understand, like, what I'm getting from this, like in the most layman's terms, is just like bullish on Solana. Like,
100%.
Handle a lot of data, and like this is what is backing it up. But kind of to get here, like, that's an amazing point. Like, relying on big tech to run these RPC nodes kind of defeats the purpose. Getting a little more granular, what happens when GenesysGo becomes more of like the go-to RPC and validator provider? What is kind of the way of nipping off this centralization? And what's sort of the plans for that?
Yeah, so that is actually the one of the primary drivers of our NFT drop yesterday. So we think about that too, right? we are very fortunate, Stephen and I, that we built amazing relationships with some of the best project development teams, currently building on Solana, and yeah, we also think about okay, well, we power X percentage of Solana traffic right now. As we continue to grow and scale, what does that look like? It's not scalable. It's not scalable, and it defeats the decentralization purpose to just have one company that eventually turns into AWS for blockchain, right? You don't want to be the AWS for blockchain. You want to make the people be the collective AWS for blockchain, and that's why one of the central purposes to our to doing the NFT drop yesterday is we built a a very revenue positive business in a pretty short period of time, courtesy of the community and just their wonderful support. Now it's the time where we start to look at acceleration, right? We built the launch pad, we built the rocket. Now let's fuel it up and let's take it off. And what that looks like is a true decentralized RPC network, where initially in a phase in kind of a phase one, which we've already built out the connectivity for a phase one layer, where the Solana RPC configurations require a certain machine, a certain hardware level of machine, or a certain level of hardware machine. You can connect. You can just be like, hey, I've got the right configs. I've got the right machine. You just can connect into the network and begin to add your compute power from your machine. What it looks like in kind of its final form, if you will, is everybody, each individual computer can act as its own RPC, and contributing its own compute power to the network. So you think about proof of work style mining. That's all you're doing on Ethereum. If you're an Ethereum miner or a Bitcoin miner, right? You're contributing your compute power to processing blockchain transactions. Well, that RPC layer is a really great surface to introduce proof of work style mining onto a proof of history chain, where, again, ultimately, and it's kind of the final iteration, anybody can plug in, just your desktop computer, you're about to go to bed for the night, and you want to mine, you want to process RPC calls for 5 to 6 hours while you sleep. Cool, you can do that, and then you can earn rewards and emissions based on how effectively you process those requests, how much compute you're adding, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of really cool things that can be done when you start to really truly chase decentralization up and down the network stack, if you will. And that's our ultimate goal, because we don't want to become, like I say, we don't want to become the next AWS for Amazon. I think if saying that that's what you want to become, like I say, it's you're saying, great, I want to become the next centralized big tech behemoth, and that's how the community ends up getting left behind and forgotten.
Definitely, yeah. And so I think that's a great way, right? Have everyone show up and hook up. And I really like the idea that obviously this model will reward the users, and that's a great way to expand. I'm curious, what happens to you guys? Obviously have a massive leg up in getting all of this hardware. Is there some sort of DAO that'll be governing the majority of these servers? Because I imagine you guys will still have the bulk of them, correct?
Hopefully not. Hopefully, over the course of time, GenysysGo will be just another member of the Shadowy Supercoders DAO. So ultimately, what will end up happening is, our servers will be just another bunch, another group of servers in the bunch, right. And when you get to the point where people are starting to add their individual compute, you can have a backbone of really strong, super hardcore machines, and you can do some really cool things with playing with the way that they playing with the things that they provide to the network, to help support the person that's like sitting on their MacBook and they're processing calls, right? But yeah, ultimately the goal is to have the DAO, which this is why we're just so thrilled with a lot of the turnout for our drop yesterday, because a lot of our NFTs were bought by or minted by like developers, right? Like some of the smartest people like on Solana, which is great because I'm not that smart. So being able to be like, cool, there's some really smart people that can help like bridge some gaps is awesome. And it's going to be great because I'm super excited to see like the idea and the vision that Steve and I have put together. I think it will probably evolve and morph 10, 15 different times over the course of the next year or so, and end up being something that's far beyond anything that Steven and I could have like come up with ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of a DAO. That's the beauty of a decentralized community, right? It's going to be really cool.
Yeah. And we've been dancing around it a bit. I think we'll jump in there. I think there was another sort of tangent I got there, but sort of with the NFT sale, it went amazing. Obviously, it sold out. And I saw something that was really cool. And you guys are now extending RPC services for free for the end of the year. Is that correct?
Yeah. So yesterday was crazy. That's all. That's all I could say. It was the it just yeah, the community has our eternal gratitude. We there's just no way we could ever express like truly like the depths of just how great, like, yeah. So
yeah, or go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, so one of the things that we are doing is it's super important to us, especially given that 8 months ago we were literally just two guys that build servers, and we're saying, hey, trust us with your project. Trust us. We're not gonna screw it up. It's gonna work fine. And some people did, and it's like because of the community, right, that we were ever able even to like get to like the point where yesterday like was a thing. And so it's always been like really important to us to like to always keep in mind like how do we actively like give back for that moment where somebody along the lines just said, you know what, let's give these guys a chance. And so a large portion of what we raised yesterday is has already gone to ordering a a huge amount of servers, and basically giving the entire ecosystem access to an unrate limited and unthrottled RPC network, so that way they can go chase the Solana speed limit, right? They can go try to chase like how fast validators can actually build blocks instead of having to worry about like getting rate limited or anything like that. And yeah, that's like our that network is going to be accessible to anyone. I say the servers are being configured like literally right now. That's what poor Steven's doing at the moment while I'm talking to you. So thank you. But yeah, it's so that network's going to be open to everyone until the end of the year. And for existing users of our services, again, as just a huge thank you, they'll be getting an extra month of access to our network, to their existing network, I should say, at no cost until Jan 31 of next year. Because again, it's that group that allowed us to even get where we are. So, but yeah, so yeah.
And I think that's amazing, right? Like NFTs have proven a great way to not only get the community involved, sort of incorporate this DAO, but then also, okay, cool, you raised a ton of money. What are you doing with it now? Actually building this infrastructure. So I think that's amazing. And then this is only like the first side of the coin per se, right? Like this NFT now gets you extra rewards. Particularly, it sounds like you guys are going with an airdrop of GenysysGo GG tokens, I believe. Do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so it was something that's been interesting to us as we've kind of gone through this process of building and growing and everything like that, is the fact that there is still kind of one space in the let's call it the growth cycle of a project that is still incredibly highly centralized, right? And that's the capital raising space. And I thought it was interesting. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of NFT drops, and obviously we power a ton of them. But no matter how you slice it, like it's kind of like everybody's kind of been dancing around the fact that you're still, like, when you do an NFT drop, you're still raising a ton of capital for what is a pretty low initial like investment endeavor. It doesn't actually, like, the resource costs to create your own NFT are actually pretty small relative to like what you get out of it. And that was that, like I say, so that was like kind of something that was interesting to us as we were going through our as we were growing the project, and like revenues are kept growing, and we're like, all right, we really want to chase this decentralized thing. But in order to do that, we need this, and this. And in order to do that, it's going to take us this, like this many months or, a year to get the resources to do that. And that's, like all of that is what raises are for, right? It's that acceleration. And so the more that we got to talking about it, more we were like, well, this is cool, but, we don't want to just like give like a huge portion of our tokens or equity in the project to one of a handful of super centralized entities that ultimately end up getting like this massive leg up on the community, when at the end of the day, like I don't care how prominent one of your like like a VC that has signed on or an investor that's signed on to your project is. They will not be like the foundation your project is laid on is still the community. You still have to have like users and hype from the people in order for any of that stuff to matter. And and any of the name dropping that you want to drop, like in order for that to matter, you still have to have the people. And people do that name dropping so that way they can try to get the community excited. And our thought was, well, why not just let the community be a part of that? There was one VC I talked to at one point where they literally were like, look, we only consider working with projects where we know we can get 100x return. And you think about, like, by the time that 100x return rolls around, like where do the people like get involved with that, right? It's way further down the line. And so yeah, that was the genesis of this whole thought process was like, well, the people be interested in being a part of that like 100x return that the VC is saying, like, this is our, like, we have to see this, we have to see the potential for this, that's our minimum type of thing. And apparently it resonated well.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And I'm just curious, I'm not sure if I saw anything yet. Do you guys have an outlined tokenomics for that, or is that something that's coming in the pipeline? I know a large portion will be airdrop to these NFT holders. Is another portion going to be used to potentially incentivize people to hook up to this decentralized RPC? Curious where you guys stand with those sort of things.
Yeah, so the outline for the tokenomics is in our Discord, in one of the FAQs, which I'm gonna be doing a little bit of like cleaning up on today. But yeah, so it's outlined in there. The token use case will ultimately be to power, incentivize a decentralized RPC network. But what's also like really cool about like this stage and the fact like that we now have like this really amazing, like very active, but active in a very constructive way community. We're getting to hear and see a bunch of like really cool ideas from, like I say, just from the user, from the community. And that, like, that gives the ability for like us to, as we work and integrate like with this new community that we've been lucky to become a part of, that gives us the ability like to be agile and like find like, okay, there's here's the route we were trying to go. But if we just kind of like, if we kind of skew just a little bit in this direction, then our original idea becomes, something even bigger and better. And there's already been a couple of comments or questions that the folks in our Discord community have asked, where Steve and I are just like, whoa, holy crap, that could be huge. And so yeah, so I'm really looking forward to like continuing to work, build, engage, because I think there's some really cool opportunities to like tweak the the allocations of the token, like not the tokens that are not set aside for NFT holders to receive via the airdrops, but the rest of like the remaining 50% of our tokens, there's some really cool opportunities to improve upon that allocation even. And one of the things that we're doing is when we do have our IDO, which we'll have, we'll do like a snapshot of NFT holders, before the IDO. But when we do our IDO, we also want to recognize that, for one, if you're any type of a holder of seed tokens, like, it's super normal to have like vesting periods for like VCs and things like that, right, on those tokens, because you do get a huge leg up, huge advantage. But we also recognize that, again, that's like always not feasible for the general community. And so we're actually building into our IDO an off ramp, if you will, where the IDO is going to be funded in part by holders of seed tokens who basically want to de-risk. They want to either contribute some or all of their seed tokens and sell them at the IDO price. And rather than like GenysysGo taking all of the raise from the IDO and that just going into our pockets and then the holders of the seed tokens are like, okay, well, I guess we'll wait, over the course of the next year. The IDO or the funds from the IDO will actually be split with with these the folks that are holding seed tokens that are like, oh, this is cool, but man, like this is life changing for me. The fact that I got tokens at at this, like, for pennies on a dollar, and now now it's IDOing at like $1, $2, $3, $5. That just changed my whole life. I need to be able to do something with that. We don't want anybody to feel like stuck.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool and novel sort of model. I'm curious, with those NFTs and sort of these seed token holders, I don't know if I caught it. Will they be vested or will they not be?
Yeah, so seed. So basically, after you get that opportunity to off ramp pre-IDO.
Yeah.
If you decide, no, bro, I'm hanging on to these things, then that's when the vesting, a vesting schedule would kick in, and all of that, like all of this is controlled via smart contract. All of it completely transparent on chain. Prior to IDO, prior to snapshot, that will get audited, by not just by like security firms or cybersecurity firms, but also posted on chain, open source, so that way the community can go through, audit it, pick it apart, and all that fun stuff.
No, okay, yeah, I think that is an incredible model. I think the vesting is really important. Like, you guys have sort of this. You allowed the community to become seed investors through an NFT drop, and you're not like diminishing it. Like, okay, look, you guys are going to be locked in, but if you think this IDO price is great for you, go ahead and offload some risk. Like, you're definitely appeasing to a lot of different parties there. I think that is great. I'm curious we're outlining it a bit and we're starting to get near the end here. So if anyone wants to drop in some questions, we'll see if we get some good ones we can answer and help anyone out. But what is the future of GenesysGo's roadmap? And I know we sort of were dancing around this a little bit, but what are you guys focused on a lot? It sounds like getting these new servers set up, this token. I'm just curious, maybe you can summarize it and wrap that up a little bit.
Yeah. So like you said, token, obviously in the very short term, getting servers spun up online, decentralized RPC. I think what's going to be really cool is the community that we have right now is it's going to continue to be distilled down into ultimately the people who are super interested or super passionate about being a part of something like bigger than themselves, and that's like I think that's going to lead us to a bunch of really cool things that candidly, I mean, I can't even guess what they might be beyond decentralized RPC, because as soon as we start to, we could fire up decentralized RPC, and then Steve and I go back to the drawing board and be like, all right, what's the next thing we're going to do, right? But by having like a community full of passionate people that are constructively engaging with one another, it's going to be really cool to have like the DAO map out the roadmap beyond decentralized RPC. I mean, we have ideas. Don't get me wrong. We like I said, we've been looking up and down the hardware software stack, and have found some really interesting places to go attack some things. But this whole thing was kicked off by community. It was funded by community, and the future roadmap should be decided by community.
Yeah, and that was actually something like I wanted to get into and ask. So it sounds like at some point you guys obviously have your initial vision, and this is always like a very delicate balance with DeFi projects, right? Like, when does the DAO completely take over? When do the people who have been building it, who have seen massive success, like, are they still needed? It sounds like at some point you guys are looking to turn this over to the DAO. I imagine it'll just be some sort of snapshot and voting system via the shadowy supercoder NFTs, correct? Something along those lines.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, in my mind, as soon as we have the ability, like, to know, like, for instance, like the decentralized network, that it's stable, it's self-sufficient. Like, in my mind, the sooner the better, because as I said before, I'm not that smart, definitely not the smartest guy in the room in most cases, and so being able to bring in and actively engage with some of the like the smartest people in the ecosystem, and a ton of people that have completely different perspectives and points of view than what we do. I think that's the only way that you end up building something that is again greater than the sum of its parts, and doesn't turn into a huge centralized pat ourselves on the back because look at how much revenue we generated for ourselves type of project.
Yeah, and I definitely think this is like taking an interesting sort of development. I think this NFT drop fired up everything, and it makes a lot of sense. Like, it wasn't like one of these cash grabs. Like, you guys are already spinning up servers. I think that's incredible, and something we're seeing in the ecosystem is like, okay, you guys raised all these funds. The art is cool, but like you were saying, like, it's not particularly a ton of resources going into that. What's happening after the raise? And I mean, you guys already have a testament to that, and then sort of trying to spin this up for the DAO to take control, I think, is an incredibly like a testament to really trying to make this decentralized, and was something I was curious about just going into this. And sort of just to wrap this up here, I'm going to sift through some of these questions. Some of these I might be able to answer, some not. Let's see. I think this one's interesting. Are there plans to expand GenesysGo outside of the Solana ecosystem? It doesn't sound like there's as much demand for RPCs and such. Have you guys thought of that?
Yeah, so there's actually one of the biggest infrastructure providers, or Web3 infrastructure providers, can't talk, is a company called Blockdaemon, right? They provide like RPC and validator services to many different chains. Most chains, they over the past couple of years, like literally like 3 years, I think, they've raised like over $1 billion. They're their valuation is multi-billion. And so the demand is definitely there, because the RPC needs of Solana, they're the exact same of every other chain out there, and you also have the ability at that point to catch like the next Solana, right? But at the moment, like in the short term, now we're 100% focused like here, and when I say short term, I mean like the next several years, focused right here, with the caveat that you never know when the next Solana could just like pop up, and I think we're well positioned at this point to see that, and then get in just ridiculously early.
Yeah, and I think this is I'm just gonna jump to another question I was reading here. Someone said, "Is GenesysGo ahead of their competitors? What separates GG from others?" I know when I was looking up RPCs, it looks like there's a couple other people maybe offering them for
Mhm.
Solana. I didn't even realize that sort of these RPC and infrastructure providers were such a big industry on these other networks. What is sort of your stance to that question? It seems like GenesysGo is like planting itself in almost like the gold mine of infrastructure.
Knock on wood, yeah. Yeah. It's so I think there's with a few of our competitors, simply the fact that we use like bare metal servers and we don't touch cloud anything. From a thesis perspective, is huge differentiator, but purely from a performance standpoint, it makes it where we just can't be touched. There's one of our other competitors, who if I was going to recommend like anybody, it'd be go to them because they built bare metal servers as well, and their bare metal servers, there's they perform very strongly. I think what really differentiates us at the end of the day, and this is something I've always kind of had in the back of my mind. If you live by, it's like in trading or financial planning. If you live by your returns, you die by your returns, right? The second returns go bad, you don't have any other value beyond that. And so if we live by our machine performance, we die by our machine performance. What really separates us is the fact that when we first got fired up, we kind of looked around and we were like, there's not a lot of like infrastructure engagement like on Twitter, in Discords. So rather than us like sitting in our own Discord and waiting for people to come to us, we got out and we just started we got into as many Discords as we can, just started participating and being active in the community. And that's always, in my opinion, the number one differentiator for any project is the relationships that they build. And that really, more so than even servers, is our focus.
Yeah, and I mean, the community that's been showing out for something like a project,
I know.
you guys don't even have a token, no yield farming incentives, nothing like that. Those are sort of like the big things that attract all of these users, and you guys have a community that's coming out incredibly strong. A couple other things here. Someone is asking for potentially other projects offering drops and opportunities. I'm sure if people reached out to you, you wouldn't shy away from that. Something I am more curious about that I might
Mhm.
not be looped into is someone saying 12 months plus of giveaways lined up. Is that something that is happening? And if
Yeah.
so, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so we've met because we powered so many NFT drops. We've met just a huge amount of tremendous like artistic talent. Artistic talent that is dying to be showcased more and more and more. And so one of the things that again, if we think about like fundraising and things like that, that's important to us is we're not just like dropping things onto the community just for the sake of dropping things on the community, but but providing avenues for the community to be exposed to new things. In this case, new artists, help new artists have an outlet to disseminate their work. And so so yes, we've been lining up basically a series of drops, which will be dropped to the like to our community only, of different artists, and as a way, like I say, to showcase and highlight talent. There is, so I've said this in our Discord a few times. I'll kind of say it again here, right? There's so many nuances, right? Like one of the things that came out yesterday was like, what if I'm minting via just one wallet versus, well, I have like 5 wallets. What if I'm minting there? How many of those do we get? I'll 100% will say like, it's a great question. Didn't even think about that. So, I would would caution the community too much against like looking at their own specific use case, because those are things that we need to like figure out, right? Those are things that, you know, where we have to make decisions based on like what's best for like the broader community. So it's one of those situations, right, where it's there's going to be along the way, like, you know, yeah, that didn't work out quite the way that I had hoped, or, you know, that kind of gets screwed up a little bit, and you know, is what it is. But at the end of the day, like, yeah, the drops are about showcasing and highlighting new talent for that, so that way that new talent can get out into the ecosystem, right? Like you see, like I mean, the artist who did our NFT, I've gotten, you know, tons of DMs from people like, who did your art? Who did your art? You know, I'd love to. We're doing a project too. We're trying to find an artist. That's the goal, the ultimate goal, because that brings non-crypto people into like crypto, and that, like, more so than any drop, that's going to be what gives like real, like true value, and expands the ecosystem.
Yeah, and I mean, we're already seeing it here this first time around. Like the community showing up to this event, and something I've just been thinking all stream. I've done a handful of these streams with projects,
Mhm.
communities ranging from 40 to 100 plus thousand sort of Twitter followers. And I just remember opening up GenesysGo Twitter, and I'm like, oh, 4,000 followers. Like it's not the end of the
Yeah,
world. It's
yeah,
not anything crazy, but this is one of the strongest like community showing outs that we've had on one of these live streams. So just to see that and like what's building here, it's really cool. And I think it's just a testament of what's being built at Genesys Go. It's also like there's a much bigger layer to this because it's RPC and infrastructure. This isn't
hmm
like your fancy, flashy 3% daily yields that people are jumping
hmm
into and like win moon, win this. Like this is an actual use case that, I mean, there's been issues with it in the
hmm
past, and you guys are sort of bridging this gap.
hmm
So I think that's completely incredible. I'm kind of wrapping things up here because I
yeah,
unfortunately have a hard stop. I know there's a couple questions in chat that didn't get answered. I would probably point you to the Discord, the
mhm.
FAQ section. Not sure if Frank has anywhere else, but other than that, Frank, thank you so much for joining. I don't know if you have
Yeah,
any final remarks. If not, I'll go ahead and boot you off here and then just
yeah.
wrap this up.
No, I just say thank you to the community. That's there's no other way to sum it up. It's just thank you for everything.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible. All right, Frank, thank you so much for joining us. I'm
Yeah,
sure we'll
a lot of
have
fun.
you on sometime soon. It looks like you
Would love
guys
that.
have a lot of developments. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, and then we will definitely catch up in the meantime.
All right, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yep. Peace out, Frank. Awesome, guys. So that was an amazing live stream. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Sorry we couldn't get to all the questions. I unfortunately have a hard stop. Frank did an amazing job jumping on, explaining RPCs, validators, the need for them, and how Genesys Go provides these services efficiently. It's also really interesting to see sort of the other steps the project is taking to incorporate decentralization, the shadowy supercoders DAO, raising these funds, and not only like, okay, now we have these funds, but deploying them for new networks and also making them free till the end of the year. So it's just really incredible watching this infrastructure project build. There's a lot more to it under the hood than it really seems. And they're just really getting started. So I think it's really exciting to have Genesys Go on here, and we'll definitely have them on in the future. And again, you guys are building a great community out there, so keep it up. And it really sounds like in the near future, you guys will be the ones sort of steering the ship of this project. Again, everyone, please go ahead, subscribe, like the video, set notifications, because we're doing a ton more live streams like this. And after this response, we'll definitely be sure to have Frank or other Genesys Go team members on. Again, thank you guys so much. Peace out.